JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. So in my recent ERTC seminar, which you can get access to, the link in the body of this video, but I wanted to walk through straight from the seminar, what was part of it, but just a mini little video talking about the economic value of PPP versus ERTC. So I have this both in a PDF that you can link to, but then I also have it in Excel. And in Excel, remember, if you do open it, you hit enable editing. Well, this is now yours, and any and all numbers and calculations you'll want to double check. Anyways, so when we're talking about the analysis, what are we really getting at here? What am I trying to go over with you? Well, if you had to choose between PPP and ERTC, which would you choose? Well, PPP is going to be more economically valuable to your business as compared to ERTC. That doesn't mean you don't take ERTC. It's if you had to choose, you would choose PPP forgiveness over ERTC. Now, this may seem like an obvious to some, but those that are facing it and trying to figure this out, this I think is a key to work through. Now, the other aspect you want to look at, and I'll do another mini video on this where we really then take into account, well, of your payroll costs in a covered period, how much of it do you really need for ERTC? So for those that are getting into this overlap, this becomes an important question. So in this analysis that I'm doing here, I'm doing apples to apples, which just means that we're just going to take, what if there was $10,000 that only included gross payroll and health insurance, didn't include the dental or the vision or the group life, which we know can be included in PPP forgiveness, and it's not going to include the employer match on retirement. This is just taking into account apples to apples of the same amount of expenses or type of expenses for ERTC to match to PPP. So with PPP, this is money that's given, $10,000, therefore zero came out of the business pocket, if you will, and then it yielded a tax deduction. So we're just going to go with the highest tax rate of then savings, which $10,000 would save $3,700 in taxes in this example. Of course, that wouldn't take into account any savings at the state level, but the economic value of PPP then is $13,700 on $10,000 of money that's received and forgiven for PPP. Now, when we go down to the ERTC, and I am going to show you the raw value of ERTC, that it is still valuable. You still want to get ERTC. It's just max your PPP forgiveness and then get your ERTC with other wages and health insurance that then qualifies. But I did run it two different ways. Of course, we know ERTC has a different calculation in 2021. Most notably, it's 70%. By the way, it's 70% of $10,000 in wages per employee per quarter in 2021, and that has been extended with the new American Rescue Plan Act all the way through the end of 2021. So that's now a potential of $28,000 in tax credits for the employer. Nonetheless, we're comparing $10,000 here. So with ERTC in 2021, $10,000 of qualifying payroll expenses would then get a $7,000 credit, $7,000 going back to the business. Now the business had to spend 10 grand, it got 7 grand back. So the net amount out of the business account, if you will, is $3,000. That $3,000 is going to yield a $1,110 tax benefit, which is just $3,000 times the top tax rate potential here, that it saves $1,110. So when you take into account that $7,000 came back, they still had to spend 3 grand, but that 3 grand saved $1,110 taxes, then the economic value compared to PPP is $5,110. I'm going to skip ahead to show you that I do show you the raw value of the ERTC, but right now We're just focusing in on compared to PPP. Now, just quickly, if we look at then the credit in 2020, which is $5,000, by the way, $5,000 max per employee for the entire year of 2020, any wages paid March 13th and after that qualify. But $5,000 would be the tax credit received on $10,000 of payroll cost. The net amount still needed to be spent by the business, $5,000. That $5,000 then would yield a $1,850 tax savings. But as you can see, they spent 10. They got 5 back, okay? Economically neutralize, and then a tax benefit of $1,850. And I already know you're scratching your head. But you have to remember, I'm comparing it to PPP. Because in PPP, they didn't have to spend a dime of their money. They got 10 grand. In 21, they got 7 grand. And in 2020, they got 20 grand. 0 came out of the pocket of the business, 3,000 net out of the pocket of the business, and 5,000 net out of the pocket of the business. Just laying out the facts of the circumstances. That 10,000, that is the tax savings. This 3,000 is that tax savings, net money out of the business pocket, and then a net savings of $1,850. And so you're probably looking at it and go, well, JJ, how does it only have an economic value of $1,850 when they got 5 grand? Because I'm comparing it to PPP. Now, let's go down to what we normally would be dealing with, which is the fact of the matter is PPP and anything like this has not existed before. So now when we just look at the raw value of the ERTC, meaning we're not comparing it to PPP, this would be, hey, I've gotten my max PPP forgiveness. I've got wages and health insurance left over that you can use for the ERTC. Fabulous, because you're still going to come out ahead. But let's take that same amount, okay, in 2021, a $7,000 tax credit that came back to the business. Okay, the reduction in tax savings is $2,590, meaning there was $10,000 spent by the business, and when you get a $7,000 ERTC tax credit, it reduces down the deduction, unlike PPP, but it reduces down the deduction. What did it reduce it down by? $7,000. So what is then the net tax effect? Well, it caused there to be a tax savings lost of $2,590. You're thinking, JJ, what? Think of this. If somebody was able to deduct $10,000 in payroll, right? Simple math at 37%, that $10,000 in payroll would save $3,700 in taxes at a 37% tax rate. But they don't get to deduct 10 grand. They only get to deduct 10 grand minus the tax credit, in this example, $7,000. So that $7,000, yes, money came back to them. I'm taking that into account. They got 7 grand, but by losing the deduction, not a bad thing, but by losing the deduction, then that cost $2,590 in tax savings. So the net economic value for ERTC raw, not compared to PPP, is $4,410. And it's the same concept down here in 2020. $5,000 is received. A $5,000 deduction is then the only amount that gets to deducted. The business paid 10 grand to employees and health insurance, got 5,000 back, but that 5,000 that they got back reduces down the deduction the business originally had. So that loss in tax savings is $1,850. Therefore, the net value after tax effect of the ERTC in 2020 is $3,150. And I'll just close by, you may think, well, wait a second, this doesn't add up. The savings is $1,110 here, and the savings cost is here is $2,590. Well, in this analysis up here, when comparing to PPP, they get to deduct the net $3,000. So when I'm taking into the economic value, I'm saying, well, they got $7,000, they get to deduct $3,000. Therefore, that saves them $1,110. So I'm not taking into account they got a deduction of 10 minus 7. I'm taking into account the net, and then this tax savings is based on the amount that came out of the business bank account as a net amount. This here is showing that there was a reduction in a $7,000 deduction here. The reason the math is the same here, well, just it's split in half. So that's why that comes out the same. So by taking the seminar, you get this as well as a bunch of other stuff here. And you can go to the link in the body of this because I am going to make this one public. But you get access to the first seminar, which is a 2.5 hour. This seminar, you get access to the seminar that I just did here recently. It's almost 3.5 hours, and then about 3+ hours of Q&A. You get the PowerPoint that goes along with it, and then I have an executive summary that you get a copy of, and you can walk through. And then I give you examples on how to calculate the ERTC, give you a flow chart on how to walk through the calculation, as well as then knowing how you qualify in 2020 or 2021. The economic value we just went through, and then I give you an Excel spreadsheet on how to calculate your average number of employees, your gross receipts test, not only for 2020, but for 2021, because in 2020 you have to be down by 50% and only 20% in 2020. How to calculate the ERTC wages, because wages include the gross payroll and the health insurance, but you have to allocate the health insurance to each employee. And I break that down and show you how to break that down. And then I do an analysis to show you how to max out your ERTC and your PPP loan. I also pull that up in an Excel spreadsheet and show you basically in a calculation how to work through figuring out how to maximize both related to that. And then just the ERTC calculation worksheet in itself on actually how to calculate it. I go through the most recent IRS notice 2021-20 and give you a list of that. I also just break out the questions so that you're able to have an easy reference to all of the questions so that you can easily go through and find the questions in this 102-page document. So it's just a quick, how do you prepare Form 7200? So I have a deep dive video where I walk you through that. I give you, of course, the 7200 and the instructions from the IRS website, but then I prepare Form 7200. I go through the instructions, highlight the things that apply to the ERTC. Also, I then have another video where I do a deep dive into preparing Form 941X. I've got a little PowerPoint that goes along with this little mini seminar that you get instant access to, give you links to the instructions, but then I actually go through, as you can see here, and I do an example 941X. So in the video, I show you, well, here's what originally could be, here's how you do the 941X. And then I highlight the key things out of the 941X, which is your amended payroll reform form related to the ERTC. And then you get everything that was in the first seminar as well. And so in the first seminar, there's that video and its PowerPoints, 2.5 hours and 3 hours of Q&A. Research video, it's the same video that's here, but I also give you all the IRS announcements. A number of these right here are in the second seminar as well. And then this one is not how to prepare Form 7200, but it's how to walk through and file and the pitfalls. And then here's all the IRS announcements and lots of links. And then I walk through the ERTC in deep dive fashion on aggregation. I also walk through, do spouses and owners get included? Have you thought of this in terms of what is the tax effect of the ERTC? As well as then, well, how do you report this for tax purposes and financial purposes? Of course, you can see I have all of that. And then I just throw in as a bonus here the employers that are getting the sick and family leave. So I give you basically the FAQs, but then I also give you what I used with my clients, which is the calculation. So I've got it for all of the different credits that come into play, as you can see here. So that's just given. The seminar's not on this, but I give it as a benefit because it's another payroll tax credit. Also, the self-employed are able to get this deduction. So I walk through, not deduction, tax credit, which is better. So I walk through the self-employed. As you can see, there's 3 different calculations as well for the self-employed for them to get it on themselves, and then give you links to all of the laws that were there. So if you made it to here, if you're a part of the seminar, thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of it. If you're interested in taking this ERTC, click on the link. You'll get instant access to everything here, the worksheets, the seminars, and the seminars have just a little bit of overlap. The overlap would just simply be some of the basics, but I walk through, I feel like 360 degrees to ensure that you are not only understanding the credit, but taking advantage of the full credit. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe, and then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. Yeah, and I'm not sure why the mouth lags with the sound. Have a great one.